Lifting weights will lower insulin more than a low carb diet will. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. If you guys would please remember to click like down below, it would be greatly appreciated. Follow me, subscribe if you aren't, and please leave me a comment. Again, I would greatly appreciate that. So let's get over to the topic of lowering insulin levels. Again, people misunderstand this whole insulin obesity hypothesis, and they come up with all this nonsense about, well, if your body didn't produce insulin, no, you'd die. You'd be dead. You don't produce insulin, you die. Pretty straightforward, guys. And, on top of that, they're not looking at what happens to type 1 diabetics who don't get treated. Yeah, it's the organ damage, everything else. Like, no, you're not trying to reduce insulin to zero. And in fact, once you start lifting at a serious level, trying to make your body produce more insulin is actually beneficial. And it's because as we lift weights, it's actually really hard. Our body stops producing as much because we just don't need as much. So this is something that when we get into this, people are forgetting. They're like, insulin bad, and it's like insulin is necessary for not just function but muscle growth. And people also forget when it comes to how effective it is for growing tissues, insulin is far more anabolic to muscle tissue than it is to fat cells. Okay? Our concern with elevated insulin is not even necessarily shuttling anything into your fat cells, it's that it blunts fat burning. All right. And so that's kind of the point there. But you're not getting rid of insulin, and I think the take-home people on the lower carb diets forget is that they're eating protein. Protein is extremely insulinogenic, okay? Almost as much so as carbohydrates, right? And that little factor kind of gets forgotten in that whole equation. So it's like, what are you guys eating? Fat? They're going to eat nothing but fat? Well, here's what's going to be the kicker, and I think this is what really blows their minds. Fasting insulin goes up for people on extremely high fat, low carb diets if they're eating a lot of saturated fat and other stuff. Your insulin levels go up. And I know that's confusing to people. They're like, what? It's in the blood work. So look at tons of them. Like, you'll go look at the blood work of a lot of people, especially if they don't lift and they follow a deep ketogenic diet that they've been on 3 or 4 years, and you go check their circulating insulin levels and their circulating glucose, it's actually oftentimes above average. Now, people are going, I don't understand. Well, because their diet itself has created some insulin resistance. Okay? Their diet's created a little bit of insulin resistance. And by that same token, you are still getting insulin from the protein you eat. You're still on a somewhat insulinogenic diet. Like, if you're sitting around eating 200 grams of protein a day, you're going to get a pretty robust insulin response from that. Okay. Conversely, if you go look at someone who lifts really hard, a serious athlete, okay. I mean, let's take me. I know I'm 48. People are like, you're getting old. No, I'm not. All right, someone like me who trains 6 days a week. Squats 500 pounds, deadlifts 600 pounds, lifts 6 days a week with a lot of volume. You take someone like me in that situation, if I were to have a day where I ate a bunch of white rice and chicken and broccoli or whatever, and it doesn't have to be me, it could be literally anybody in that same case. Anyone who's gained more than 20 to 25 pounds of muscle from their years of lifting, okay? I'm up like 50 or more. When you're at that point and you eat those foods, you're still going to have a lower circulating insulin level than the non-lifter who's standing around eating 2-3 pounds of steak every day on no carbohydrate. You're still going to have a lower circulating insulin. You're probably going to have a lower fasting glucose. Your blood sugar and stuff is actually going to be better. And again, these people go, I don't understand. That doesn't make sense. Like why? You're eating, more insulinogenic food, and it's very, very simple. Muscle tissue is insulin sensitive. Trained muscle tissue is way, way more insulin sensitive. So anytime you are gaining muscle as a result of lifting weights and exercise, gaining significant amounts of muscle, your insulin sensitivity goes way up. Like insulin resistance becomes a non-thing unless you were literally injecting it for muscle building purposes, which many bodybuilders do. Incidentally, many of those bodybuilders are shredded with very, very low body fat. That should tell you everything you need to know. All right, there should be everything you need to know about the fat storage capacity of insulin. That guy's ripped with a six-pack and he uses more insulin than my grandma does. Yeah. Okay. So much for that hypothesis. But back over to that point. You have a high insulin sensitivity. That means your body produces less. Like, in other words, a very small amount of insulin will do 3, 4, 5 times as much work as far as shuttling nutrients go than someone who's more insulin resistant. And the reason is your muscles soak it up. Your muscles at this point have such a robust desire to just suck up insulin. So think of it this way. You have lots of insulin receptors and they're really, really sensitive. That means any insulin your body produces, your muscle tissue grabs it. It grabs it, it goes through the cell membrane, it sucks it in, sucks the glucose and amino acids, everything it's trying to transport. Your muscle tissue is greedy for insulin. So what happens? Your blood sugar will go down faster than normal because the insulin is transporting all of it into your muscle tissue. Therefore, your body stops producing as much. It's like, I just don't have to have it. I don't need it. I don't need as much insulin. Okay, therefore your pancreas and other stuff just gets used to producing less. It has to work less because your body processes it, because not your body, your muscle tissue processes it so efficiently and so effectively compared to the average person that your body just doesn't need much of it anymore. Okay, it just doesn't have to produce much. It just slows it down because it's like a little bit does everything I need it to do. So really, if your goal is to lower insulin levels, lifting weights will do dramatically more, and I mean a mind-boggling difference more than eating low carbohydrates will. Okay? And ironically, some of the lifters on really low carb diets still end up, particularly depending on the composition of the diet, still sometimes have somewhat high fasting insulin, fasting glucose. They actually don't get this. So what does this tell you then about your hypothesis with this? Like, it doesn't work. And I'm not saying the lower insulin doesn't help with burning more body fat. It obviously does. But how are you going to lower it? You're not going to lower it by just getting rid of carbohydrates. That's not going to fix the problem. You lower it with your muscle mass and your exercise and physical activity. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative. I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.